Talent is one thing, but vision, that's everything. I just had the vision. The words hung in the air of the stark white gallery, bouncing off the polished concrete floor. A photographer's flash went off, a silent pop of lightning that froze Zane's face in a mask of magnanimous genius. His smile was wide, but his eyes, they were just tiny, triumphant slits. He was looking right at me, a silent dare. Behind him, our creation, Aura Echo, pulsed with a soft, chromatic light, the light I had spent 900 hours coding. I held my glass of cheap Prosecco steady. You certainly did, Zane. I met him at a soul-crushing corporate design conference in Cleveland. We were the only two people under 40 who weren't wearing lanyards with a sense of grim pride. We bonded over a shared eye roll during a keynote on synergizing brand authenticity. At night, over lukewarm beers, we sketched out the idea for a collaborative art studio on a cocktail napkin. It felt like an escape hatch. I remember thinking he was safe because his ambition felt as desperate as mine. A few months later, back in Philadelphia, we landed our first small grant. To celebrate, he bought us matching Moleskine notebooks. He wrote the visionary on his and the architect on mine. It felt like a joke at the time. That was the first red flag, how easily he assigned himself the glory. The next 2 years were a blur of creation. We moved from my cramped apartment to a shared studio space in a converted warehouse, the kind with exposed brick and unreliable heating. Those were the golden years, fueled by takeout from Pho 75 and the hum of my custom-built fabrication rig. We celebrated landing the Plexus Arts Foundation grant with a bottle of Lafroig and blasted the National on our new KEF speakers until 3 a.m. I was the architect, the engineer, the one who coaxed impossible geometry from code and light. Zane was the front man. He handled the networking, the press releases, the schmoozing. He was brilliant at it. The imbalance began so slowly I barely noticed. I was giving my time, my savings, my technical expertise. He was taking meetings. Then my name started getting smaller on the grant applications. It's just for conciseness, Talia, he'd say. Everyone knows we're a partnership. He started using the studio's business account for long, expensive lunches with critics, billing them as outreach. I'd work a 16-hour day debugging a motion sensor, and he'd breeze in smelling of wine and expensive cologne, telling me how he'd planted the seeds for our next big show. I rationalized it. He was the face, I was the engine. Every great duo had a division of labor. The clue that changed everything arrived on a Tuesday in March, an email, accidentally forwarded to me. It was an invoice to the gallery hosting the Aura Echo exhibition. It was from an LLC I'd never heard of, Visionary Constructs. The amount, $18,500, was for specialized hardware and material sourcing. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. I had paid for those materials. Every single custom LED panel, every microprocessor, had been charged to my personal American Express card. He wasn't just taking the credit, he was double billing for my work and pocketing the cash. For the next 6 weeks, I became a forensic investigator. I sifted through 3 years of our shared Google Drive, using the version history to prove my authorship on every line of code. I downloaded security footage from the studio's Dropcam, creating a time-lapse of me working alone, night after night. I found 42 texts where he called me his junior associate to vendors. The scale of the betrayal was breathtaking. He hadn't just stolen money and credit, he had systematically erased me from our own story. The breaking point was the gallery opening. In front of Mr. Sterling, the gallery owner, and Ms. Vander, the most influential art critic in the city, Zane delivered his masterpiece of a lie. Young reporter asked him about the complex technical work behind the installation. It's a common misconception that tech is the hard part, Zane said, his voice smooth as butter. The real work is the concept, the soul. I provide the soul. Talia was a great pair of hands to help execute it. A great pair of hands. The room fell away. The curated applause, the clinking glasses, it all faded into a dull roar. In that silent, frozen moment, the plan began to form. I noticed a detail he'd overlooked in his quest for glory. On the steel base of the installation, he'd insisted on a small, laser-etched plaque, Aura Echo by Zane Foster. But beneath his name, in a 4-point font he thought was just legal boilerplate, was the copyright date and a unique alphanumeric serial number, a number tied directly to my private code repository. He'd signed his name to my proof. My first call was to Priya Singh, an intellectual property lawyer whose reputation was as sharp as her tailored suits. Her retainer was $15,000, nearly wiping out my savings, but it felt like the best money I'd ever spent. We spent the next month building our case in a shared Dropbox folder I named Project Chimera. I scanned receipts, organized text threads, and annotated video files. One afternoon, Zane walked into the studio while I was on a video call with Priya. I minimized the window just in time, my heart hammering against my ribs. He smiled, oblivious, working hard. He asked, "I'm just ordering some new filament," I replied, my voice miraculously steady. The evidence was a mountain. We had the Google Drive logs showing 97% of the project files were authored by me. We had the time-stamped video of me soldering the final circuit board at 4:17 a.m. We had the invoice from his sham LLC, Visionary Constructs. We had the texts where he diminished my role. The ironic twist came from a fabricator we used, a man named Wesley. Emailed a sworn affidavit stating that Zane had explicitly told him I was a salaried assistant and not to discuss finances with me. Zane had tried to isolate me, but in doing so, he'd created our star witness. Priya didn't file a lawsuit. Instead, she drafted a request for a formal mediation with Zane, the gallery owner, and their respective lawyers. It was the perfect decoy. Zane walked into that sterile conference room like a man expecting to swat away a fly. Zane, thank you for coming. I just want to clarify authorship. He leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. Talia, we've been over this. You can't build a brand on a technicality. The vision is what matters. The vision is mine. Priya let the silence hang for a moment before she slid a single piece of paper across the polished mahogany table. It was the invoice from Visionary Constructs. Zane's bravado flickered. Started to stammer about bookkeeping errors, about complex funding streams. Mr. Sterling, the gallery owner, said nothing, but his jaw tightened. That was the first wave. Then I spoke. The piece has a diagnostic mode, Zane. A kill switch, really. It's for maintenance. Can you tell us the 16-character command to activate it? He went pale. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly, waxy sheen. He knew he was trapped. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a panicked, pleading hatred. Couldn't name the code because I had written it 2 weeks before the opening. A secret key only the true architect would know. Priya cleared her throat and read the code aloud from a document on her laptop. This command, she said, her voice cutting through the tension, is present in the source code files registered with the U.S. Copyright Office under Ms. Rostova's name 4 months ago. He finally broke. He shot to his feet, screaming that I was a vindictive liar, a nobody trying to ride his coattails. Mr. Sterling stood up calmly. This meeting is over, he announced. Be in touch with our legal team. As Zane stood there, sputtering, exposed, and powerless, I met his gaze one last time. I was never just a pair of hands. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Within 24 hours, Artworld Blogs had the story. The gallery issued a formal press release announcing the correction of artistic credit for Aura Echo to its sole creator, Talia Rostova. Settlement, which Zane signed to avoid a public fraud lawsuit, was for $125,000, every cent he'd stolen, plus damages. He was blacklisted. The Plexus Arts Foundation publicly rescinded his next grant. A friend sent me a screenshot of his new LinkedIn profile a few months later. He was a creative consultant for a mid-tier marketing firm in Arizona. He was back in the beige, corporate world we had sworn to escape. My new studio is smaller, but it's mine. Sunlight streams through the large window, illuminating the dust motes dancing over a new project taking shape on my workbench. The betrayal hollowed me out, but it also forced me to stand up, to own my power to be both the architect and the face of my work. At my first solo exhibition, a woman asked me about my creative process, how I managed to bring such complex ideas to life. I smiled. Talent is one thing, but having the vision and the hands to build it, that's everything. I finally had both.